Hello everyone, and welcome to the second Talking Tuesday video series, where we will review frequently asked questions and topics specific to health links and coordinated care plans. In this session, we will be talking about using consent forms and how to gain consent. The first question is, when and how do I use consent? So you always want to get consent at the beginning of the process. So we would suggest having an open and honest conversation with your client about initiating a coordinated care plan, really emphasizing that it is meant to be a team-based approach to care, and that includes sharing the coordinated care plan with others on the care team. Next, you want to be sure to thoroughly review what the coordinated care plan entails prior to initiating one, and allowing plenty of opportunity for your client to ask questions to ensure they are providing informed consent. You want to review the benefits of having a coordinated care plan and discuss who it will be shared with and how information will be shared in a confidential manner. The patient agreement form can be used to help guide your discussion. And lastly, you want to discuss the ability to grant or deny access to the coordinated care plan as needed. However, keep in mind that this option should not be overused, as it is not conducive for the best use of the coordinated care plan. Getting informed consent up front ensures that you have provided the client with adequate and appropriate information, allowed opportunity for questions, and can move forward with initiating the coordinated care plan with their full understanding and knowledge of what that entails. Remember that if you don't have the client's consent, you cannot move forward with initiating a coordinated care plan, and that is okay. Maybe it's not the right time for them. However, now that you have had that initial conversation, it is a great starting point for future conversations that can be revisited at a later date when the client feels that they're ready. The next question is, which consent forms do I complete and when should I complete them? So there are two consent forms. So one is the patient agreement form and the second one is the multi-agency consent form. So the first form is usually referred to as the patient or consent or patient agreement form. So at the top here, you can see where it reads Coordinated Care Management Health Links, Multi-Agency Consent Form for Use, Collection, and Disclosure of Information. So this is the one with the 6 bullet points in the middle, and then it has the 2 boxes at the very bottom of the page. So this form outlines the basic principles of initiating and using the coordinated care plan, as listed in the 6 bullets, and some of these points include that the coordinated care plan can be shared with members of the care team in both paper and electronic versions. The coordinated care plan, the informed consent collected on the coordinated care plan is limited to only the information that is required and approved by the client. The client is able to provide or withdraw consent at any point in time. The information on the coordinated care plan may be used for evaluation and planning purposes as defined by HIPAA, which is Personal Health Information Protection Act, and that the client is always in control of their own care plan and really will be an active participant in developing and maintaining their care plan. This particular consent form is not mandatory to complete, and this actually does not require client signature. However, we do encourage you to use it for a couple of different reasons. So one, it can be used as a communication tool or a guide to initiating conversations with your client about a coordinated care plan. After you have reviewed the consent form and discussed the coordinated care plan with your client, you can keep a copy of this consent form and place it in your client's chart for future reference as needed. You can sign and date it to provide information on when it was reviewed and whether or not consent to initiate a coordinated care plan was given. This consent or agreement form is a useful information page for your client to take home should they have any questions regarding the coordinated care plan and their management structure later on. So we found that in the past that many clients don't always remember the details of the discussions that you may have had with the client and different healthcare providers. So this form is really a good resource for them to refer back to when they are at home or wherever they may be. It also lists the contact person and phone number should they have any questions later on. The last question on this form also indicates whether or not a client would like to have a copy of their coordinated care plan, which we would highly recommend that they do. There are some clients that don't request a copy of the coordinated care plan. However, we really do encourage you to review the benefits with your client about having a copy of their personal care plan. So some of these benefits that you may want to explain to the client include that it contains valuable health and medical information that they can refer back to as needed and at any point in time. It really tells their story so that they don't have to retell it over and over again. So that's where the reduction of duplication comes in. It lists their integrated care lead and care team members so that if they feel that there have been any changes in their health status, that they know exactly who they can contact. And lastly, having a coordinated care plans mean that they are taking an active role in their own care, and they are expected to be an active participant in achieving their goals. So by having a copy of their coordinated care plan, it is a great reminder that they are supported and that they have a say in their healthcare and what they are working towards their goals. Remember that if you are giving your clients copies of the documents, including the consent forms or the coordinated care plan, make sure that you write or stamp client copy at the very top so that then you are not held liable for breach of privacy should the client accidentally leave their document somewhere like Tim Hortons or a public space. The second consent form is often referred to as the multi-agency consent form. However, the title at the top of the page is Coordinated Care Management, Health Links, Consent for Use, Collection, and Disclosure of Information. You will see that the patient information section is at the very top, just here, and then the rest of the page has fillable lines in which you can place members of the care team with checkboxes in the right to indicate whether or not consent form will be shared with them. If you have access to Health Partner Gateway, you will need to fill out this form along with the initiation and update form, and then fax it over to the LHIN. This document informs the LHIN who has access to the coordinated care plan through Health Partner Gateway, or HPG. The client may elect to provide or withhold consent by checking the yes or no box just on the right-hand side of the page. This form also allows for the primary care provider to be notified of the client's participation in HealthLinks, if the client does want to consent or share this information with them. Lastly, at the very bottom of the page, you will notice the information of the emergency contact person, the name of the client or SDM, the relationship of the SDM to the client, the agency that you work for, your name, phone, and fax number. At the bottom of the page, again, is a yes or no box to indicate whether or not the client would like a copy of their coordinated care plan. This form does ask for the client's signature. However, if they are resistant to sign for any reason or unable to physically sign, please do not let that be a barrier to moving forward. They can essentially sign an X, or you can sign the consent form and simply write on the form that verbal consent was provided to sign on their behalf. So to quickly review the two consent forms, the first one is more of an agreement form. It is non-mandatory. However, again, we do highly suggest using it for the reasons that we mentioned earlier. And again, you can disclose those benefits to the client. And the second consent form is used to open up access to Health Partner Gateway so that it can be shared through Health Partner Gateway. So the second question is, where should I store the consent forms? Consent forms should be stored in a secured and confidential manner, such as in the client's chart, that it is not accessible to the public, or filed in a secure setting, ideally with 2 locks. So for example, a locked filing cabinet within a locked room. If the client is provided with copies of the consent forms or the coordinated care plan, it is recommended that you write on the stamp client copy, so this was previously mentioned in the slide before, on it so that you are not held liable for breach of confidentiality if the client does misplace it for whatever reason. Next is, what is a substitute decision maker, or SDM, and when do I need to use one? So a substitute decision maker, or SDM, is the term used in Ontario law for a person who is unable to make health or personal care decisions on someone's behalf when they are unable to do so. If a doctor or healthcare professional finds someone incapable of making their own decisions about any form of treatment, they will look for the substitute decision maker to make decisions for them. The doctor refers to the list of hierarchy of people listed in the Healthcare Consent Act to determine the appropriate substitute decision maker. The SDM is the highest ranking person on the list who is available, capable, and willing to make treatment decisions for you. People can also designate someone they trust to make personal care or financial decisions for them if they become unable to make those decisions themselves. So they can do this using a legal document called the Power of Attorney. The Substitute Decisions Act, or SDA, it's also referred to, is a law that governs what may happen when someone is not mentally able to make certain kinds of decisions. The Act covers financial or property management decisions and decisions about personal care, which can include anything from healthcare, food, housing, and safety. Under the Healthcare Consent Act, in order to be capable with respect to providing informed consent, a person must be fully understanding the relevant information provided that is required to make an informed decision, and or be able to appreciate the reasonably foreseeable consequences of making or not making a decision. If the person is not able to satisfy either or both parts of this test, they may be found incapable for the purpose of that treated decision. Health practitioners are required to get the person's informed consent or refusal of consent prior to initiating any forms of healthcare. If, in the opinion of the healthcare practitioner, a person is not mentally capable to make a treatment or other healthcare decision, then the health practitioner must get the consent or refusal of consent from their substitute decision maker. You are presumed to be capable unless there is a reason to believe otherwise. So you may be capable of consenting to some treatments, not consenting to others. So again, this really is in regards to having that clinical judgment in place. The second point, in terms of the coordinated care plan, the client must fully understand the information provided, as well as appreciate the foreseeable consequences of their decisions, and provide consent to move forward with the coordinated care plan. If they are unable to do so, or already found incapable of healthcare and treatment decisions, then the substitute decision maker should be contacted to make the decision on their behalf. The next question is, what if there is not enough room on the multi-agency consent form to put all the members of the care team on it? If this is the case, that is not a problem at all. Simply complete the required amount of consent forms and fax them to the LHIN with the initiation and update form attached. Then there will be someone from the LHIN that will be able to identify that there are multiple service providers for that one coordinated care plan. And if she'll have any questions, or someone from the LHIN will have any questions or concerns, they will be able to contact you for clarification. If you send along a fax cover sheet that details the number of forms being sent and briefly explain that there are multiple agency consent forms, then that will help for clarification purposes and will make the process just a little bit easier. The next question, or comment rather, is we often engage with the client's family or healthcare provider to gather information for the coordinated care plan on the client's behalf. So that is a very common practice, and we do recommend that be confirmed with the client if they are capable of providing the consent themselves. You want to be sure to document in the coordinated care plan when someone else is providing information on the client's behalf so that other care team members are aware of who is providing the information and why that is. And lastly, we'll just be going over a summary with some key takeaways and an overview for you to take away the high-level summary. So consent should never be viewed as a barrier. It really is meant to be a discussion to identify other care team members who can support the client's care in a confidential and secure manner. There are the two consent forms that we went over today, which is the patient agreement form, and that does not require a client's signature and is really meant for the client themselves. And the second is the multi-agency consent form that requires the client's signature, identifies other organizations who can assess or access the coordinated care plan, and is needed to open a coordinated care plan in Health Partner Gateway. It is recommended that consent forms are stored according to your organization's practices, and again, that varies completely based on the organization. And lastly, the multi-agency consent form can be updated as new care team members are identified and would require the client's or SDM's signature. Thank you very much for tuning into session number 2, and session number 3 will be to follow.